I'll get grass creeping in my car.
Smallest quantity, no, smallest quantity.
I was gonna say, isn't Tim in town?
I saw him.
$860.
He hadn't been in town much, maybe his family grabbed him and won't let go.
How much can you do with that?
Not a lot.
Is it so? Really? Well. Give me 10 seconds to grab my phone.
Okay.
I mean,
That's not him.
400 bucks? 500 bucks?
I'll see.
Hey, James. Chief. You're sworn in while you're done then?
No, but this is the only reason why you come to these, because you said you're good. Outside of that, there's no positive reason to come to this.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 minute after 7 o'clock. I call this meeting of the General Government and Public Safety Committee to order. If you would rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll make the assumption that attendance has been taken. Comments from citizens? Seeing none, we'll close that. Public Safety, Police Department, the activity report is in your packet. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, moving to Police Department Other.
I don't know what it is.
The fact that phones were down for the police department, was that more the fact the cable was down?
Yeah, I hate to lay this at Charter's feet on me, although it's their problem, but the problem was bigger than, we got by fine, we got by fine. It's not like it happens every 10 years. We still have communication with the fire department, we still have communication with those that we needed to.
Did they offer to forward the lines to a cell phone or anything?
Yes, yes. And that worked for a while until it, the little cell phone that just,
Understood.
that worked out fine. Thank you.
No problems. Anything else for the police department? Moving on to the fire department, there was an activity report in your packet. Welcome. Glad you're back. You missed all of them. Questions or comments? Sir.
May I rewind for a second?
Sure.
I've got a question for Chief Dungeon.
Absolutely.
Sir, would you care to make an estimate as to how many phone calls the little cell phone got?
I don't know how to answer that question, James. It went on incandescently until the cell phone died of either natural causes or it had help. And I'll let you pick.
Okay. And that would be the same question for Chief Rush as to the number of calls you got, if you have any idea.
From the other day?
Yes.
Oh, we haven't got there yet, we're just doing June's. We're gonna work on that this week. Just however many he got,
How
we
about
probably got part of them.
How about the check welfares? Do you have a feel for that?
We know about how many generators we passed around and stuff.
Which would be 10?
Say, go towards the
Any other for the fire department?
And it just, I mean, and it wasn't just taking them the generator because of the length of the outage, that most of them had to be refilled with fuel, including the generator at the recreation center, which I believe the police force refueled, or between the two of you guys refueled.
Till I handed it off to
Yeah.
Debbie.
Yeah. City one, we all work together.
Anything else for the fire department?
We have the truck in service running, got the lettering on it the other day, and then the alley went out.
Have it for show and tell out here?
No, I can go get it, I can go get it, I mean, I don't know, it's not mine, I left too long ago, look like tonight.
What went out on?
Huh?
Did you say went out on?
No, I said it ain't too. When the alley went out.
Yeah, oh,
And it was handy going up down a few streets.
oh man, that was handy.
What was how was the response to this year's fireworks? Back to happier days before the 7th.
Well, the fireworks, they all went off very well this year. I mean, talking explosion wise, except one. One was inside the finale that did go off, and then I think there was one they said went off only about 20 feet. or
Yeah.
something went up.
I remember that.
I don't see it, so I mean, I don't know. So. Now, somebody did videotape the finale for us so we could look at it on the cell phone. So.
That was pretty neat.
It was good, Denny.
It was very good.
One of these days, I don't watch one of them.
The report I got from Earl, I think, he said that was worth. He was excited about the extra shells we got, and said, trying to not commit him to anything. He was excited about the possibility of trying to secure additional funding to have his larger show next year. Since I write the notes,
There was a grand total of 343 shots, minus that one that didn't go off. So.
I was close. I sat there and counted them, and Laura thought I was nuts. And I had it at about 340, so.
342 to be exact.
But that finale's what did me in. I couldn't keep up.
you were well within the margin of error.
Yeah, exactly. Just putting approximations on it.
I think somebody said it took us 24 minutes. I don't know. I don't-
Yeah, it was about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about right, though.
It's awesome.
Kids were mesmerized.
Anything else on fire department? Emergency management storm recovery update.
Well, many of you probably heard this before, so I'm going to try and do it quickly. Power went out at 6:45. We had 3 electrical crew on duty at that point. One was on vacation. We have an open position. Cities of Macon and Columbia arrived somewhere around 10 o'clock when we put out a mutual aid call through the Missouri Public Utility Alliance. The police, fire, and street department blocked off the streets that needed to be blocked off and tried to open the streets that needed to be opened up with down limbs. Most of the streets, we had most of the streets blocked that had down power lines needed to be blocked, and most of the streets that had down limbs and trees and were otherwise okay open by 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock. We also received assistance from Higginsville, Palmyra on Thursday, and then Shelbina and Fulton arrived on Friday with in the early evening. And Independence also sent some crews with some backyard machines. Yeah. So there was was that 7 cities that came to our assistance through the Missouri Public Utility Alliance. And by the way, many of them know Mark personally because he serves as the Lineman Advisory Committee chair right now. So there were people who knew him, so it didn't hurt. We had the first thing was turning the water plant back on. That got on a little before noon on Thursday. we didn't have electricity to pump water to the towers at that point. So, but they got that up and running first, and then Highway 22, and then downtown, and then it took about almost another day to get the full South Circuit on, and a lot of people in the southern part of the city are painfully aware how long that took. But there were so many lines they had to clear. There were so many. They had to isolate block by block some places, take those off.
On
And
the poles that had been snapped, that was the
yes.
part that was amazing.
And I think we're somewhere around 2 dozen maybe that were snapped, somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen poles. We don't have an exact count. But the emergency management director, Terry Castle, and Tom has named Hurley, and Jordan, and I can't remember her last name, came up to assist. They brought 2 generators. One was plugged in and ran the Stewart house. One was plugged in, and Derek Stidham came and helped hook that up to have power to the rec center. So we've opened that up as a cooling center. The firefighters provided generators at the other 2 nursing homes, so they were at some sort of power on Thursday. There was just a coordinated effort, and hundreds of citizens started hauling brush, not just to the brush pit, which we then have to move again, but a lot of them took it directly out to the landfill, and lots of stories of neighbors about helping neighbors. But every person in the city, every city staff person contributed phenomenally. And the gals here, and they are all women, so I can say that, but they took, well, Nathan took some.
I helped the gals.
Yeah, putting lists together, and Nathan in addition to the gals. But they took a lot of calls. Not everybody's happy to have their power off. Not everybody was respectful. But you know, when you get afraid and you get hot and you get grumpy. But by and large, your citizens were phenomenal in putting up with it. And
Well, your office staff even making the meals
Right.
for the guys that were coming in the service, the lineman guys, I mean.
well, and arranging for a lot of them. And,
Sure.
Donations from Tex Red Solo Cut Barbecue, Pranger's, and the Pranger's Extreme Mart, CNR Market.
Yep.
Actually, I'm gonna miss some. Chamber of Commerce made donated some money to help pay for food.
Copies from Hallsville.
Copies from Hall. Thank you, copies from Hall.
We had a lot written down in the first press release.
Yeah.
Try and
So
find
so they pitched in. Asplin sent an extra crew, a couple extra crews. It was a there's a lot of coordination. There was some the fire department's going around pulling generators. The police department had some people who thought they could take advantage of the situation. They jumped on that case right away, and there was everyone pitched in and kept the civil order. And but the person, one person I would single out is Mark Mustang. While on the ground or in a bucket at 90-degree heat, he's the one who knows how the system works, and he's the one who was orchestrating what crews go where, calling telling what circuits to open, limited staff, I think he put in, was it 35, somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 hours in 3 days, including getting called out at 2 a.m. after stopping at like 10:45. We got called back out at 2 because a low-hanging line got caught by a truck on the street. And so it was a heroic effort by a lot of people, but probably more than anything else, Mark was the most. Had the most important role. So I'm proud of the community, and I thought they did a great job. We've got a great staff. We've got a great concur, and the board has put together a good organization.
I have a question.
Yes.
Was our GIS helpful?
It's a little. It was a little, but the problem is that, most of it was in Mark's head. If Mark wasn't there and somebody was was at a desk, they could cipher where the circuits are and everything, but mostly it didn't hurt, that's for sure. And there are some places where it helps, and it helps on a daily basis, but.
Well, I was just wondering if any of these other crews brought tablets where they could tap into it, that might have helped. Or if that's something that should be considered in the future.
Well, no, it'll tell you where lines are, but it doesn't necessarily tell you, maybe we should work on making it more color-coded by circuit, but I don't think that, I mean, it's possible we could get more out of it in such a situation, but it was not just knowing what, that gives you an excellent idea of where things are standing and what the equipment is right there, but knowing how all of it ties together is more difficult to get, because you're looking at, to look at the city on that side of the screen. But what would help is but it's a high expense, is if we had a system that told us what meters were out. But those systems are very expensive. And that would have been nice to know when we turned on one circuit how many individual houses were still out, because we had a lot of down power lines in yards. So even when you got a circuit and then a block on, you still had people out because their individual lines were out. So you had like 3 layers of and GIS would not have helped with that. It could not help on that.
Sir? Sir, do you have an estimate as to how many businesses and residents were initially without power?
Everything was without power except the northwest corner, which includes like La Crosse. Sonic had partial power, Casey's had partial power, just that bank up over, that's that group over there.
So DC's was running off of the generator?
I think we got DC's on pretty quickly.
I say DC's and DD Tower on all that.
Were they? Okay. Well, they may have been, I thought do we have them up, they never lost power?
They never lost power.
All I can tell you about
But
D&D
30
is
minutes.
they had their lift working when I drove by at 10 o'clock.
Well, D&D is in that northwest sector, but a little closer.
So what would be an estimate of the number of residences that?
I think we're close to 80 or 90%. I've been guessing at 90%. And Mark is not correct.
Thank you.
So it was, and what made it more of a challenge, like I said, is there was a lot of 2 or 3 incidents on the same block. That's, we are now in the debris recovery, and one thing I would like to, I guess, get your permission on, we asked Dodson Logging to assist with the storm recovery. The green trucks that are out there that took the 77 loads of debris out and increased our chance of getting that stuff clean. And also kind of, to a certain extent, I think it helps the city to see that stuff, the morale of the city to see all that stuff disappearing quickly. But that comes at a cost, and I think they're charging us a very reasonable rate, $150 an hour for the truck and 2 guys, which is a pretty competitive rate. But if you multiply that out, it comes to somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 a day. So.
How many days do you think it'll take to clean it up?
I think after a week we should be a long way towards it. So that's, I'm looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 in expenditure. And we can stop or cut back if you guys want to, but I think that we will, at that point, we will be able to have a street crew before the end of the summer, as opposed to just a yard waste and solid waste crew. And it's Northern Boone County firm with the operations here in Centralia as well.
Thoughts, anyone, on that?
I say clean it up, I think you're gonna make better headway within a week.
We're loading the trucks, the city's loading the trucks, and they loading their own trucks.
They're loading their own trucks. Their operation is it's a two-man operation. They got a ground man, and then they got a guy who's they have a grapple, and they just pick up limbs. They're digging 15, 20 foot long limbs. They don't get.
We're getting an hour out of 8 hours. I mean, they're not just sitting.
Oh no.
Somebody's
Oh,
gonna get.
No, they don't stop. They're
I watched them off and on, and
They're doing a good.
it was impressive, their productivity, just what they were doing there, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'd say keep them rolling.
Do you need a motion?
I would for that amount of money, yes. Please.
I entertain motion.
I'd make a motion to continue to allow Dodson to work until the job's complete.
Is there a second?
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
I apologize. The second was.
Anything else for storm recovery?
Yes.
Yes.
I had a citizen contact me asking if our emergency action plan was put into place. It sounds kind of like it was.
Sure. Yes.
No.
Well, we did work with the emergency management director.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. And the other one asked me about storm sirens. Anybody hearing storm sirens?
I also talked to Terry Castle about that.
Okay.
And the National Weather Service who issues those calls or tells the Boone County when to issue those calls never called anything. And what Terry told me is if you're the meteorologist that look at that didn't see this storm coming out of that cell. Thank you. That other cell.
So is this a restatement like they do in financing?
Yeah, I guess. I'd be interested to hear about the meteorology, but at this point, it's kind of understanding for next time.
Okay.
Terry Castle did recommend that we do a after event meeting, which might be valuable. It'd be good to get particularly the police chief, fire chief, and department heads together. Discuss. I mean, I think we did well, but there's always a chance to learn and prepare for better.
Sure. Yeah. Anything like that, doing a postmortem, I think that's.
Post incident.
Yeah, and one of the things the other thing that I thought, as you mentioned in your discussion with the chief, the phones were down. So earlier this year, City Clerk Heather Russell suggested we have set up a Facebook page. That was invaluable in getting information out. We had 439 new people like the page during the storm. It was incredibly useful.
Anything else for emergency management? Okay, moving on to protective inspection, occupancy permit presentation by Nathan.
This one doesn't have as many pictures as the other one did. You guys were in the zoning committee, but
as you remember, the mayor tasked us with looking into the possibility of initiating occupancy permits for this would catch residential properties, particularly rental residential properties that are substandard. It would require us to set up an inspection program. It would most of the I'll let Nathan. Now that we got.
well, I stuck in a picture for Matt because I don't have any other pictures in there, so I enjoyed that one. Essentially, we're looking at we were approached about whether our city can do rental inspections or not. I don't have a definitive legal answer on that. We've asked a couple of people. We've gotten some advice. As far as we know, we can within certain limitations. and if the city decides to go further along this path, obviously you can go farther into exactly the legal precedent behind that.
It is clear that fourth-class counties can do building inspection.
Yes.
And the residential code is part of the International Building Code, so the answer has been more positive than it's definitely been more positive than negative. I believe that you guys looked at this before, and I think Merritt agreed that it was. What he said was he thinks that he remembers that was okay.
Thank you. That was
Okay.
If I
that
got
was very helpful. Yeah. Okay, so essentially, looking at cities close by, I'll just mention first off Columbia. They have a rental inspection system. But obviously, they are very much different than Centralia. Right? They are much larger. They are not a fourth-class city in any way. But just so you know, again, Matt can correct my technicalities, I apologize. But as a charter city, at least as in their charter, they or under the legal authority they have, they do inspections for new properties and sales differently, and they treat rental inspections by themselves. They have the legal authority to do that. And because they have all their landowners register as company businesses, essentially. Is that right, Matt? Mm-hmm. They have all their landowners register, and because of that, they're allowed to do specifically rental inspections. However, when we're talking to Moberly and Lebanon, smaller cities, again, not exactly comparable to Centralia, but a lot closer, at least when we're talking to the people up in Moberly, Paige Douglas is their rental inspector, and so from her, Moberly had a lawsuit against them, and actually I have it at the very end here. I found, and then I lost it. I apologize for that. They had a court case brought by landowners, or rental owners. It's Ashworth versus the city of Moberly in 2001. As far as, according to the websites I found, again, I don't have access to the extensive legal websites, and I'm not a lawyer. But according to this website and the part of the statement by the judge, it appears that Moberly won that case. That the case essentially claimed that, I'll just read it, Ashworth involved owners of rental property claiming that an ordinance in the inspections required them to obtain an inspection report prior to renting their property, and they say it violated the Fourth Amendment. However, according to this, again, I'm not a lawyer, in Ashworth, our court concluded there was no Fourth Amendment violation because the ordinance expressly required the inspectors to obtain a warrant or court order if the landlord did not consent to property inspection. So they didn't just wander in, there was a process to actually entering and doing the inspections. And because of that, the court, at least as far as I can tell, I'm not a lawyer, upheld that. But because of that, according to Ms. Douglas, Moberly seems a little more sensitive and tries to be a little more careful. And so you'll notice their occupancy inspection process is a lot more detailed and strict than Lebanon's. Lebanon is a little more relaxed. They haven't had a lawsuit. They're not as worried about that for whatever reason. So you'll notice that in the comparison. And then that citation of the code, that is, I think it's Moberly's code. This is where they cite this section of the Missouri state statutes. Essentially it says if the city has power to make ordinance about a topic, we can adopt technical codes because the ICC or other technical codes that are used as the maintenance codes would be adopted. And so if Centralia wanted to do that, unless we wanted to write our own very extensive code, which as far as I know, wouldn't really help, wouldn't be wise probably. It's easier, most cities usually just adopt the ICC or other kinds of code. Is that correct, Matt? I'm not getting too far off on that.
The International Residential Code,
And
and there's a couple different kinds of codes, but
if I remember right, you can adopt just pieces and parts of the ICC. You don't have to adopt them.
Well, the ICC is this large thing. So yes, currently Centralia has already adopted different ICC code sections.
Right.
I don't have them all listed off in my head. Matt can give you those, but certain, there's plumbing, the ICC plumbing code, and there's the ICC building code, and there's a maintenance code and the existing building code, and et cetera, et cetera. So.
Or I mean, yeah, the maintenance, probably maintenance code, not the residential code we covered out here.
Are Moberly and Lebanon both charter cities?
Matt?
Moberly, I believe is, but I don't think Lebanon is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Moberly is.
Yeah, Moberly is, but I don't think Lebanon is.
That's an important question. I don't have that.
Yeah, but, yeah, so.
But these are some of the, these are a lot closer comparisons than obviously Columbia, or a larger city. And these two cities were very approachable. They do these kind of inspections, and so they're things we can look at. So kind of inspection, they both label theirs occupancy inspections. Okay, so they're short inspections. Matt, if I say something wrong, part of this is from my memory of talking with Paige Douglas. Matt and I went on 2 inspections with her, went over to Moberly and saw how she ran 2 inspections. And then I talked to, I forget his name, but we'll come up here in a second, the person who does the inspections down in Lebanon. And then I also looked at their codes and their websites, and this is all kind of pulled from there.
Lebanon's a third class city.
Okay. Okay, so they're both occupancy inspections. The difference here, again, noting Moberly being a little more stricter and more detailed, they have a very strict permit process along with that.
No, I'm sorry. They were incorporated as a third class city. They now have a home rule. They are also the parents.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And then Lebanon does not do occupancy permits except for new builds. So Moberly does permits for all of their inspections. Lebanon, they do an inspection, they give you a piece of paper saying you pass, and then move on, a kind of checkbox. It's not as, they don't do the permitting process as much. The affected structures, they both have their different definitions, but essentially in their code, every structure. If it is a residential structure that is a dwelling of any kind, both cities do these inspections for it. What is inspected, again, we don't have to go through all the details here, but a lot of stuff. I guess the big difference would be Moberly has a super long list that is pretty detailed. They have a 4-page document that they use for that the inspector looks at as she does the inspections for every house. Whereas Lebanon has a short 1-page basic questions checklist, right? So Moberly is a lot more detailed. Moberly is using the Property Maintenance ICC 2012 code, whereas Lebanon is using the 2006 Property Maintenance code. And then however, in the Moberly, the section for their code is labeled the existing building code, and so I'm a little confused exactly, but Paige Douglas clarified they do use the 2012 property maintenance as what she inspects for. So if Centralia wanted to adopt code for that, either one of those, the ICC comes out with those every 3 years. So there's a 2006, a 2009, a 12, and now a 15. So how often? This is similar, but not exactly the same. Moberly does it every year for rentals. The code says every year for beds and breakfasts. I don't know how many they have in that town, but that's in the code. Lebanon also does it yearly. Both of them do it whenever there are complaints. Moberly also has in their code saying they can do it when there is reason to believe there are violations. So actually, in that sense, Moberly is more broad than Lebanon, allowing them to do more inspections if there's actually some reason to do so. The difference in these two would be Moberly does them every year if there's any change of occupancy the year beforehand. At least that was my interpretation of what Paige was saying and what the code says. Whereas Lebanon, they only do it during a year, doing once every calendar year if there's any change of occupancy during that calendar year. So, which essentially means that Moberly does them more often. They both say yearly, but because of the technicalities, Lebanon actually does not do them as often as Moberly does. But both inspectors say they are busy. They do them. The Lebanon inspector does 9 to 10 every day, even with those rules. So I mean, they are busily occupied doing these inspections. The inspection process, very briefly for both of them, the property owner comes, fills an application, pays the fee, they do the inspection, they get a yes or a no. All right, that's the very basic. There are some slight fees differences. Moberly charges a higher upfront cost, but then a lower re-inspection cost. Lebanon actually charges a very low upfront cost, but their back-end costs, if you have to do it again, are actually higher. So overall, Lebanon is probably cheaper, but they do have additional costs as well. This is very basic. Any questions so far on the idea of what the inspections are? I think we're pretty clear on that. It's a basic idea. They walk through the house, they check their checklist. It is a visual inspection. It's not they're not going to measure things, they're not going to tap on this or that or check the pH value or something. They walk through and they visually check to make sure everything is in accordance with the basic code.
Did either one of them share their checklist with you?
Yes, we have both of those, and if you want to see them, you can. I don't have them at the moment. Actually, nothing to do. If you really want to, I can pull them up the screen later on. So,
What's it mean if the building is occupied by anything?
That's what I was
I don't know exactly, and we can clarify that with them if we want. That's a good question. I pulled that from their code, and you know how code doesn't always answer everything you want it to. So,
Any human use.
yeah, I would imagine if it's occupied. Moberly also says they should be vacant, but Moberly allows you to do it. They don't charge you if it is occupied. So there are some technical differences, and if we put together a code, the board would have to decide how they wanted it to happen, but those are pretty small differences, usually. How they're enforced, we don't have to go through all these. Moberly has a lot of enforcement options. Again, this is all Moberly on this page. Again, Lebanon's is shorter. So Moberly has ordinance injunctions saying you can and cannot do this in their code, saying, both of them essentially say, unless you have the inspection passed, you should not occupy the building. It will say that basically. Both of them have reference to labeling the building as a public nuisance. However, Lebanon is only a public nuisance if somebody's occupying a building that does not have utilities on, whereas in Moberly, if any violation of the maintenance ordinances can be considered a public nuisance. Again, Moberly being a little stricter there. Moberly does a lot of their enforcement through the permit control because you have to have a permit to occupy, and so the regulation of that permit itself, whether it's in existence or suspended or all the different situations for the permit, they manage that through that. Whereas Lebanon manages it through managing the utilities. They won't turn your water on. If you want to occupy the building, it's a public nuisance and illegal for you to occupy without utilities. And if you don't get your inspection passed, we're not going to turn utilities on.
And Lebanon has municipal electric, and Moberly does not.
That's a good point. I did not know that. That does affect how they would manage that. So that's a good point. Both of them can take recourse to the courts for fines, or if inspections are refused when they're supposed to be done according to code, they can ask for. They can go through the court process to get an entrance. I wrote it all down because my memory's bad, but for access, a search warrant or appropriate court order to get into the building. Moberly allows for, if similar to dangerous building code that we have, if the violations are not resolved or they do not participate with the process, at some point along through the process, Moberly can come in and do the work for them if it's an immediate danger. Lebanon does not have that, at least I did not notice that offhand. So, those are the basic ideas of how they enforce it. And again, for Centralia, I don't know what would work. Enforcing that through permits or managing the utilities. We do run all the utilities here, so that option might be open for us, depending how it works. Who does the inspections? Moberly is the fire department. So, which makes sense in a way. They do have a full-time, Matt correct me, but they have there's not a volunteer fire department, right? So they have a full-time fire department. So they have capacity in the fire department more than Centralia does. Paige Douglas, who is the inspector, is a fully trained firefighter. So her full-time job is as an inspector, but she is an on-call firefighter at the same time. And I don't know the logic in this, but the fire departments often do inspections of buildings for permits. And again, I'm not an expert on those processes, but I know both Lebanon and Moberly have fire departments doing other inspections.
I know the fire department in Jeff City, goes around and does building inspections for all the businesses
That's,
on
yeah,
an
a lot,
annual
yes.
basis,
Yes.
so that, number one, they can catch a problem before it becomes a fire.
Yes.
And number two, to become familiar with the structure, in the event they have to go in with a fire, they're not going in blind. So that's why I do that.
And I'm pretty sure Moberly and Lebanon do the same thing that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So, something that Paige Douglas mentioned as we were walking around with her is she mentioned the difference between Moberly and Columbia in their inspection process, and she was citing that in Columbia their inspectors are not firefighters, and so they don't pay as much attention to the windows and the egress, the need for escape and entry into a building, as a firefighter would, who's been trained to know what to look for. And so, and partly because of the firefighters' influence, Moberly has stricter window rules than Columbia does. Mandating that the windows be updated so the firefighters can, or people can get out and firefighters can get in and out, etc. So, Lebanon, they have a specific department, the Community Development Department, that manages all the inspections basically for the city that the fire department does not do. Moberly has other departments that do the compliance and other kinds of inspections. How they're trained. This is important for Centralia if we wanted, if Centralia is actually serious about this and wants to hire somebody, Centralia needs to consider how to, what standard do we want the inspector to be trained at. Everyone we talk to agrees, at least, so Moberly and Lebanon, the people we talk to there, agrees that these kind of occupancy inspections do not require as high a level of inspection as a building permit would. Like to make sure the structure is put up correctly, that's a different level. That's a higher level of study of inspection process. When I was talking to Lebanon, Mr. Hemphill is his name. He said that for Lebanon, again, just postulate this from the requirements the city has mandated for the employees they have, so having the residential property maintenance certificate, he feels that would be enough for Lebanon. That's kind of the basic requirement that Lebanon has. And somebody with that certificate would be able to essentially train and delegate to others. For example, when he was hired, he helped the previous inspector do inspections, and that inspector had the training where he did not, but he was trained by that inspector who would oversee and make sure he was doing it the proper way. For Moberly, she did not actually have any specific training before she was hired. She just had a lot of experience doing inspections. So I guess technically you don't, it's probably a training or equivalent experience in her case. She would recommend the home inspector state certificate training. And she mentioned a couple other ones that I wrote down as well, but that was one she mentioned. Pardon me if I'm getting the technicalities of the certificates wrong, but she would recommend the higher level training, essentially somebody qualified to inspect buildings as well. So that you know more, because it's always better to know more when you're inspecting a building in case you see something you don't really understand. If you have the higher level training, that inspector will know what it really means as opposed to just, oh, I think that's good enough. So, Mr. Hemphill over in Lebanon, talking about the trainings, actually I'll get to the next slide, how to pay for it. He mentioned the ICC test for the certificates. You buy their book, their code, essentially, as far as I can clarify with him exactly what he was referring to, but he said they have a book, which I'm assuming is the code or a study manual or something, and you study it and then you take the test. That's what it sounded like. So the book is about $100, and the test and certificate is about $160. And so if Centralia wanted to invest in that, that would be the training. That was for the basic minimum training for the ICC code. The other trainings will cost different amounts, and some are in different locations. Paige Douglas was mentioning trainings that you'd have to go to, and so if the city was paying for it, we pay for staff to take 2 or 3 days to go to a training conference for these kind of things, and obviously that costs the travel and the lodging and the other things involved with those kinds of larger trainings. I called Moberly, their finance department told me that is Paige Douglas' salary, $33,000 essentially. Mr. Hemphill down in Lebanon told me he gets paid $15.20 an hour, and so just calculating that out for 26 pay periods at 80 hours a week, that's $31.6 thousand. I got the number. the finance department estimated 1,000 to 1,500 for the inspection forms and paperwork involved. Really, remember they do have this fancy 4-page document they use for every inspection, so obviously there's a little more cost to that. 2,500 or so for vehicle expenses. I would imagine there's vehicle expenses down for Lebanon too, and training costs as well. And also contacted Boone County about how much they are paying for entry-level building inspectors. And this is copied and pasted from their want ad, essentially. So their starting hourly salary for an inspector is 17 to 18. And those are the qualifications, degrees, certification, or equivalent combination of education and experience, full-time employment, benefited, etc. Just a note actually on Lebanon, the previous inspector was being paid at 17 something an hour because he had higher training. When Mr. Hemphill was hired on, he didn't have much training. He's been gaining experience, and actually he technically has 2 jobs, so he's probably underpaid at 15. So 17 an hour actually might be more. I don't know for sure, but that if you want to follow the county, that might be more reasonable fee, depending on the workload and how much they're actually doing, obviously. So, and you'll notice that both of these inspectors had double jobs essentially. Were working full time in something. They also had other obligations. And in talking with Matt, considering what is good for Centralia, again, Matt can go on and further elucidate on what the options are. But either we train current staff, we hire new staff. There are potentially different options.
Well, one of the things, if we were going to try and do occupancy permit, we would probably then want to have somebody who also did building inspections. Whether we did residential and commercial or just residential. Adding commercial is a whole other level and requires the ability to read plans and a bunch of other stuff. But right now we're paying Boone County about, I think last year it was a little over $20,000. I should look at that before. So maybe 25. So we wouldn't be starting from zero. But we would, if we did this, then we would have our own in-house inspector, which has positives and negatives. The positives are that they are going to be here dedicated. The negatives among them are they're going to go on vacation. Then we're going to have a backup in Boone County. They're going to be the guy, and they're going to. It's a tough job to be the inspector in a town where you're the one person. I know you have to find the right kind of person who's going to be able to tell people no. I mean, that's true for any building inspector, but when you're the one person, if Boone County, if our inspector suddenly couldn't get along with anybody, we could switch off and change somebody else theoretically. But, I guess you could fire this person, but then you're back there. So anyway, there'd be significant additional costs.
Right. It's not budgeted.
No, we could not just suddenly flip the switch without additional costs.
I'm done with the PowerPoint. That's the fancy words. I apologize that I talk a lot.
You want to pull up those checklists that you got?
If you want to glance at them, they're kind of extensive. But
So while he's doing that, basically, this was a request of the staff, a request of the staff to do this from the board. At this point, we don't really have a full recommendation as to which way you want to go. We could bring back more information, full budget numbers if you want, and get a better definitive answer to the question whether a fourth class city can do occupancy, residential property maintenance code inspections. Probably, but both of these are both charter cities, so is Columbia. There is a separate question, which is it a community acceptable decision? And I'm not trying to duck or anything, but that is a elected official policy question.
Well, I spoke to a couple of landlords that I know anyway, and told them what we were discussing and really got a surprising response out of them. Neither one of them were opposed to it, which I thought they probably would be. I do have some questions though, that whether we have enough quote business to even justify it. I mean, how many offensive properties are there out there? I know, this got generated based on one, which, you gotta start somewhere,
But a comment on that, it's not just offensive properties. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but Paige Luggis over at the fire department said they got, how big an impact was that on their fire calls?
Well,
What was that number she
They
said?
said I think she said something like a 17% decrease in the number of.
Was it
structure
17 or
fires.
70? My memory is a lot. I can look up the number, but there's a significant decrease in fire calls is what I remember.
They felt that it was worth it in terms of the decreased number of fire calls. I don't know how many fire calls we get in residential
Well, that's a good
structures,
point.
but
I don't even want to talk
judging
about it,
from the
because
look
something
on it,
happened.
yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah. I would like to see what the legal status is for a fourth-class city to do something like this.
All right. See if I'll ask our attorney, and see if we can go over the definitive answer.
Well, one problem you have, when you own a property and you live in that property all the time, you see and you're responsible and you take care. You throw somebody else in your property, they don't look at those kind of things, they don't, and if they live there 2 or 3 years, if something's leaking, they don't think much about it, where the homeowner knows if they're living there, they have to fix it. So, pros and cons of this, yeah, it could be expensive, but also it could be a benefit to some of the landlord people if you
Well, I know that
keep it kind of in a marginal thing where it can help and not be expensive and not threatening. I think that's a good word, not threatening to a homeowner.
Right, and a lot of the landowners don't live in town, but they have somebody managing their rental properties, and those rental property managers don't always treat the property as their own, and they don't take care of it. They just want to get it rented and get somebody in there to get that revenue.
So,
On single-family residential, do they inspect every year, or?
They, again, depending on the city, it depends on the change of occupancy. If, for example, you are a homeowner, you buy a house, so if it's a house that is sold, before that you're allowed to move into the new house, they do an occupancy inspection. Basically, it's checking the basic safety of the house. They don't go into super detail, well, it depends on which city, obviously, but
You don't have any
basic
bare
safety.
wires and bare wires.
But if you live in there for 20 years, you don't get it inspected 20 times.
No. You get inspected when it's change of occupancy. Or if there's a lot of turnover, they do it once a year. So Moberly does it at least once, or at minimum once a year. They can't do it less in a shorter time. Same as Lebanon. So they can't do it they can't do it regularly. It's a year or
We're
more.
talking more than just rental property?
Every property.
both of those
Yes.
cities have also taken to inspecting personal or non-rental homeowner properties upon sale. In Moberly's case, it was because of the way the lawsuit was determined. They had originally done it just for rental, but the way that Paige described it to me, and I haven't looked at the case and where the words are in the decision from the court, but that that to only inspect rental property was in a way discriminatory, and therefore they had to do both. So yes, they do. If you sold your house to Don, before Don moved in, the property would have to pass a
Occupancy.
permitting inspection.
What if I sold it to him as is, as a project?
Well, you couldn't move in until the minimum standards were met.
You can still sell as is, it's just that they can't get an
You can't.
occupancy.
Correct.
Yeah, he can't live
You
in it.
can't live in it until you bring it up to.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Well, he'd be responsible, not you.
Mhm.
He'd be responsible for getting everything fixed up.
I don't think it, that'd be right. I can't imagine. I didn't ask this question specifically, I don't remember.
But
I can't
what
imagine.
we're getting, I'm pretty sure if you sell it to him, it's his responsibility. You're done. So as the seller, it's not a big deal for you.
Does this include commercial?
No. Both of these we're talking about,
Loaded out of this
well, it's a different set of inspections. It's a different ballgame.
You don't, it's not a living in the occupancy.
Yeah, these were dwelling occupancy inspections.
But, you know, if you have building code, you can't get an occupancy to a commercial structure.
So did the Moberly case set precedents, meaning that
So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I searched for that case. That was the only case I found from Moberly, and it did have precedent. Like there was a group in St. Louis, a group, like a civil rights group, and they referenced this case and talking about the rights of tenants and landlords and stuff. So it's actually, it seems from my cursory non-lawyerness looking at the internet, that it's a fairly significant case. And actually, from what I was finding online, didn't exactly match what Paige was telling us. I guess maybe that really is the implication the city took from it. But it seems like the city won the case. I mean,
and of course what I'm getting at is that, so if we're going to inspect, we're going to inspect anything to occupy versus just rentals.
well,
If
again,
set
that's where
precedent.
I'm not clear, is because that's what Paige told us, but I did not see that in the case. We need somebody who's more lawyer trained to give us a better answer on
You see what
that.
I'm getting at? I mean,
Yes,
so
that's a
also-
good question, but I don't have a good answer for that.
Because this originally was down the path of rental properties, that someone would go in and set up residence in, separate from, okay, if anybody's gonna occupy any dwelling, it must be inspected first.
And the way Columbia gets at it is they say it's part of your commercial licenses. If you're going to sell this service, it has to be a safe service.
And so they do only rental inspections because of that licensing.
But they are a charter city as well.
I would want clarification on that too.
Yeah, I don't think we could go that route because of what businesses do license.
Well, the very first one there says is water service on. Well, 9 times out of 10, if the water's gonna be off, and so's the electricity until somebody gets a permit to occupy.
Yeah, I agree. That doesn't make much sense
That
to me.
is, I mean, I'm
This is
sorry.
Lebanon's. It's really short. That's it. Right? Again, that is their inspection. He is trained by the ICC in these things, so he might be. Some of these questions are a little general, but it's a good question, ma'am. I don't know exactly how the question works to reality. We can ask him. I mean, not in a second, but
I
we
mean,
can.
I know in houses that I've bought before, the power and everything was turned off until I decided I wanted to turn it on.
Yeah.
Well, that date on there is 2014.
That's the one where they're using, as far as I know.
Just check DNA, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Denny, you have a new job coming, I see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
If you've already studied the forms.
Oh, yeah. You gotta lay up on everybody else now.
Well, I can tell you that from when we were landlords, thank God we're not anymore, our renters never told us when they had an issue, and one of them lived there for 10 years, and I won't tell you how much it cost me when they moved out because of the damage. But because they never moved, there wasn't a thing we could do, and they never complained.
Well, unless in the one of these codes, I think both these codes say that if there is reason to suspect violations of these maintenance
But
statutes.
we didn't know because
Well-
we never went in and checked, which was, okay, also a problem of ours, was our own stupidity in that sense. But I know that a lot of these out-of-town owners, they're not going in and checking, and they wouldn't know if there was an issue or not.
Yeah.
So what would the staff, what would the board like the staff to look into before there seems to be enough curiosity to continue pursuing this.
Are these the only two cities around that do it?
I imagine not.
I
I don't know for sure.
Yes. And say, I just moved here, I lived in Hannibal for a little bit, and I had to sign an agreement when I rented. Lived there just a couple months, city, and then, of course, the landlord came in. They had just remodeled the house when we moved in. And I guess they had it worked up with taxes. When the landlord remodels the house, they get a percentage off the property tax. But part of that agreement is home inspection. So what they explained to me was that if I had damaged the house in any way, basically I'd be making that discount up with fines, to the city, if I damaged it. I didn't live there long, but I mean, they came in, they did an inspection, and I think it was fire alarm wasn't working, and then luckily the people that mowed the yard, they broke one of the sliding glass doors when everybody was there, so that worked out. But I mean, I know that's part of just making sure that the landlord had everything done that was supposed to, but to make sure that we weren't destroying the house.
I have not found an example of a city our size that's doing this. That's
Mexico
small.
do it?
The what?
Yeah,
Sorry?
Mexico, I don't know.
Mexico?
I don't know.
They're twice our size, more than twice our size.
Nevertheless, I wanted to know if they did.
I've not gotten a response. When I sent out a response to MCMA, they did not respond. And
Thank you.
I don't think they do. I don't think they, yeah, I don't know.
Mexico is also a charter city, though.
I don't, unless they adopted one recently.
I think they have council members instead of aldermen.
They're a third-class city with a city manager from the government, I think, that adopted a city manager from the government. But I'm not, they were, and in 1999, I probably was.
Did we answer your initial question, please?
What you want me to, what information you would like me to bring back?
I mean, yeah.
No. So, no.
I specifically want to know, like, case set precedents for
Okay.
what, if it's a requirement that we must inspect anything for an occupancy versus specifically
Legal
targeting a
basis.
rental.
Legal basis for just,
Rentals versus,
and also I assume for fourth-class cities.
oh, exactly.
Nathan, whose checklist is this one?
This is Moberly's. Okay, well, just so you understand what's going on here. Again, they have a lot of stuff. She created a short checklist, right? So this is their checklist. I'll make it larger in a second. And then the actual form she uses, she scanned this in for us. There you go. This is their form. So she has a 1, 2, 3, 4-page form that she uses, but it's all based off of this list of things. So we can zoom in a little more, if that makes sense. So she takes this short list that she created and she made a longer checklist that she uses for inspections. And she based this off of the code they are using. So, and I imagine Lebanon, because they are using ICC code, their checklist probably assumes a lot more than the inspector knows what's going on. Whereas it's just the way the inspectors are doing it. I think it's more personality rather than how much they're doing. Because technically both of them could be inspecting the exact same things, except she's written every detail down so she remembers, whereas he might have a more general checklist, but he just keeps track in his head because he knows what the code is. So again, I don't know exactly how these are used necessarily.
That's fraud with an error, keeping everything.
I don't know. I'm postulating here. Don't hold me to that, or I apologize. But in the end, it's the code that speaks, not the checklist. So if somebody wants to argue with either inspector, they would go back to the code to determine what is right or wrong. So the checklist is just a tool for them.
They would only do that if they fail. That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And get what a fourth-class city is allowed to do for that. I guess that's very.
Did you guys need any more? And then an idea of how much business there would be for how many inspections?
Talking about monetary, you're talking about dollar figure.
Right. Well, yeah. Well,
I mean, you were talking, exactly, I mean, you're talking about the fact that they would be able to do things that are reliant on moving forward. Anything else on this topic? Thank you for putting all that together.
You're welcome.
Moving on to general government and finance, economic development.
No report. I do know that I would report that the chamber will be not meeting tomorrow, but they are trying to get a meeting for a week from tomorrow, particularly just because of scheduling at this time of year.
All right. Park board, there's an agenda in your packet and meeting minutes as well. Any questions or comments?
I did walk around several parks yesterday, and looks like the cleanup effort is moving along quite smoothly, I guess you could say. Get a lot of the paths open and stuff like that, piles of brush, maybe pile.
Anything else, park board?
I think it's nice to note that they have something like a 25% increase in pool attendance this year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cemetery report, there is no information in our packet.
Did something.
All I can say it's a good thing that those flags weren't up Friday, Thursday morning.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, wow. Tree board report, there's no information in the packet, so nothing to report. Other than a lot of them fell over.
Yeah.
All the problems come in the way.
Oh, yeah.
Library board, meeting minutes are in your packet. And the agenda for the one on the 14th is in the packet as well. Any questions or comments? June 2016 financial statements, that information is in your packet. Any questions or comments? Any comments, Matt?
No,
On the financials?
they're no, not particularly.
Okay. Bills over $1,250. That information is in your packet as well. Any questions? Hearing none, other general government, on-call engineering RFQ.
I didn't have sufficient time to really make edits, so I just assumed that we just sort of
Table it for now. Okay.
But I did get, I am going to, based on the comments from the board, the committee last week, one of the engineering, at least one engineering firm and Jet Angel that I'm going to reduce and change the insurance requirements.
Any other? Any yes may arise.
Mary took care of the, just to remind, at the last meeting, we were going to have several department, or two out of our three department heads will be on vacation on August 1st. So there won't be an August 1st meeting. Both this committee and the other committee will meet on August 8th. So you'll have to change your whole mindset halfway through from one committee to the other.
August 8th.
August 8th. August 8th will probably be a little longer, but there will be no meeting on August 1st.
Matt, any update this when we might start working on comprehensive?
Actually, we should have an advertisement for asking people to apply to be on the comprehensive plan committee. Try to have a kickoff meeting, it's either in August or late August, early September.
Okay.
So we'll bring back a list, and suggestions from the board would be appropriate, where we would think, I'll send out in the next packet the breakdown of the different committees. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That'd be appreciated. Any,
On the 18th, next week, we've been asked to appoint 2 fire department members. Dylan Duncan and James Morris.
do they by chance know anything about building inspection?
Big Dylan does.
Not yet. We'll
They
see
will
what we
train.
come up with by next week. But that'll be in our next week.
Any other items may arise? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Say aye. Okay, all those opposed, we stand adjourned.
You said when you dig the red thing, you went in there. It is not debatable. They did one inspection. Then when you moved out, you got tore up or something.